The goal of Data Transformers podcast is to accelerate digital transformation by bridging the gap between business outcomes and rapidly advancing technologies. And we aim to bridge this gap by focusing on data. I am Peggy Tsai, top 50 women in tech influencer, co-author of the AI book, and data governance expert.
I'm Ramesh Danta, an entrepreneur, a tech blogger, and AI enthusiast. Hello all. Welcome to one more episode of the Data Transformers podcast. Today, Peggy and I are excited to introduce our next guest. His name is Dale Hitt. He's the founder of AV8.ai, Video AI Business Community, and is also the VP of Marketing and Business Development at iCloud.ai, Open AI Vision Cameras. Hey, Dale, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Welcome, Dave.
So Dale, you got two hats going on. First one is AV8.ai and the other one is iCloud. So if you could let us know what you do with both ventures.
Yeah, so AV8.ai is a business community for entrepreneurs and innovators working with video and trying to use AI to bring intelligence into their products and visual perception. And then with iCloud is a AI camera developer and manufacturer, and they sell a variety of products with the AI capabilities built in, so edge AI capabilities. And I'm really excited to be here and talk about the Cambrian explosion of smarter products that are going to market with visual AI capabilities, visual perception, enhancing their value to consumers and business customers.
I'd love to hear more about that, actually. I mean, with video AI, exactly how is AI used in videos for those of us not familiar, and what are the challenges, I guess, with AI in videos?
Yeah, so there's a lot of interesting markets that are getting traction today. One of the ones that's fairly common that people may not be that aware of is the ADAS systems built into the newer cars. So my Honda Accord has a self-driving capability where it keeps the car between the lines and reads the street speed limit signs on the side. All it's done with intelligence built into the car, built into the cameras. So that's what I'm talking about in visual perception, visual AI. It's also being used in augmented reality, advertising, like you see in football games where they render the ads up into the image, into the scene, or the line marker along the football game. That's all done with computer vision, understanding the context of the video and allowing the rendering those lines built in. So lots of places that already has traction, but we're just at the beginning with this new AI neural network technology and machine learning to really take it to the next level.
And I think I heard a funny story once about a video AI. It was like a soccer game or a football game, and the umpire's, I guess, his shiny head was mistaken for a football or for the ball, right? So
yeah, that
Peggy, you can go and say instead of shiny head, a bald head, right? So don't worry about it.
We're not talking about your. But yeah, a system that used visual intelligence to track the ball around the field mistook the head of the referee for a ball. So that just is an example of how these systems can actually fail, which is very relevant to this discussion of where the technology is.
So actually you left us hanging when you said Cambrian technology, right? So you got to explain to us, otherwise we'll be thinking, what is he talking about? So
yeah,
take us really next level of
biological mimicry. 500, 600 million years ago, animals first developed sight. And at that time, there was an explosion of species differentiation as they competed. The predators got sight and the prey got sight to avoid the predators, and they were constantly upping their game on how well they could see so they didn't get eaten, or that they got fed one way or another. But anyway, there's an analogy to that with machines now being able to visually perceive the world, that we're seeing a proliferation of different species of smart products using vision to deliver, to evolve and get better. So, I love the metaphor, and I think it's a good analogy to what's happening in the marketplace with visual intelligence.
Hmm.
I mean, so we I guess we touched upon some challenges in this area, but I guess in terms of, opportunities, like I see like on television, like these gym equipments that, it's literally a mirror, but you're doing exercises with like a thin monitor. Is that another example of, of the space where the trends are now heading towards in health and fitness as well?
Yeah, absolutely. These new in-home gyms have cameras built into them that watch you as you're performing the fitness exercises, and they can coach you on the appropriate pose and posture to do the exercise. They can keep count of your reps. They can look at how fast you're doing them and moderate the level of fatigue that you get based on what they're monitoring directly from watching you. So it's really exciting. They're, like you said, there are home fitness equipment that have it. They also have iPhone fitness apps that have this capability already built in. Now it's still at the early stage. They can only do simple posture, recognize certain posture variations, but as they go forward, they'll get smarter and smarter and be able to deliver more and more capabilities in the fitness domain. So it's exciting to see.
So Dale, one of the things that we really go a little deep into on this podcast is about the data, right? So any of the AI has got these three phases, right? One is the training phase, right? And of course, your first is the model development, and then the next one is the training, and then afterwards the inferencing, and towards actually deploying in production. With respect to videos and images, right? There are lots of programs out there. People have built like a huge database of images. One thing that I read is that the more, let's say, cat recognition, the more kinds of cats that you could have in the database, the better your predictability towards, if it's a cat or not. And if you have a limited data about a problem, then you're less likely to, have an accurate, more predictable result out of that one. So what are the challenges involved in the video AI with respect to the data itself? Is it availability of data, the quality of the data? If you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the current technologies, the convolutional neural network technologies, really need to see all variations of a particular subject matter that you're trying to recognize in order to do an effective job. And it's not only having lots of pictures of the same cat, but you have to have it from different angles, different lighting conditions, and different environments. There's a very famous story about in the early data sets, they trained a bunch of neural networks to detect differences between a bunch of dogs. And they found out after training it was recognizing the snow of the pictures around the huskies, because all the pictures with the huskies had snow in the pictures. It wasn't actually recognizing the dog at all. It was recognizing the background of the snow being characteristic. So if you put a poodle in the snow, it would say it's a husky. So there's that kind of thing. You really need to distinguish what you're trying to recognize and have data for all of it. The other very interesting scenario was they had a human object detector that was trained on lots of different humans walking around. But then when they mounted the camera in the ceiling looking down, they couldn't recognize humans from above. Another shiny head blinding the camera situation. But it was because they didn't train from that angle, it couldn't recognize humans. So it's really, if you take a human and they say, okay, here's a person, they can spatially generalize in their mind what that human might look like from the pose that they're currently looking at and disambiguate it. But current neural network technologies don't have that internal 3D model of the world to rotate and scale things arbitrarily to recognize them. So you have to make sure when you train the technology, you have all of those variance factors sampled. And some of them you can generate synthetically. Some of them you actually have to have real world pictures for.
So do you think the solution is more training, more variables in the training set, or or this will? Oh, what do you think will?
No, I think this current level of technology has its limits that are inherent, and doesn't matter how much data you throw at it, it's not going to build a 3D model of the world. I think there's a need for abstraction layers above what the current convolutional neural networks do in the feature space, up into a modeling space that allows this kind of arbitrary matching to go on like humans do. So I don't think we're there with the technology. I think there'll be more advances in technology and structures that will allow that kind of capability, but we're not there yet.
So actually, with respect to the market segments, Dale, so if you could, things that we know, video surveillance, right? So that's one piece of it. And the ADAS, the automated driving piece that you talked about already. And then you also have this, in-care, patient care, remote care kind of situations. And then you also have in the post-COVID, a lot of safety related, whether people are wearing, protected equipment or not, them doing social distancing. All of these segments are emerging, which are ripe for a video AI. It could be useful. So the question here is, what are the segments that you're seeing more opportunities where startups or companies are immediately able to implement and deploy and get better ROI, and which areas are lagging?
Okay, well, let's start with the ones that I think we don't have the technology for yet. Although Elon Musk might argue with you, is using vision for autonomous vehicles. In a generalized, open environment roads under all weather conditions. That's a very challenging problem, which I don't think is solved by.
No, sorry for interrupting, Dale, but it's like for example, Teslas of the world, and so people are doing automated driving. So how are they able to solve that puzzle? Is it a very narrow scope they're solving?
Yeah, the narrow scope of a sunny day in Arizona, keeping the car between the lines and making good turns on the roads, I think is a solved problem. I grew up in Chicago, and I was back there last Thanksgiving, and there was a blizzard that the snow actually covered up the stoplights. You couldn't see what the light was going red, green, or yellow, and you had to navigate in that particular environment. And that's not just a vision problem; that's an intelligence problem. But it also covered up all the markers on the road. You had to sort of guess where the edge of the road was, and based on your knowledge of where the trees were, how far they were away from the road. So a lot of inferred knowledge there that isn't solved just by recognizing the lines on the road. So I'm not optimistic that I'd want to be in a self-driving car in a snowstorm in Chicago anytime soon.
Yeah, you kind of put that those thoughts in my head. I mean, I never considered buying a self-driving car, but it's just becoming a little bit more commonplace. Obviously, it just talked about.
Yeah, I mean, Uber's been driving around Arizona in normal conditions for a while now, and very very little problems that they're reporting. I'm not sure they're reporting everything, but the generalized problem that humans can solve, driving in India or driving in some other place in the world where the traffic is even more complex than here, is a challenge.
Okay, so that's one area you said it's a challenge. So which ones have more traction? Which areas?
Yeah, you mentioned some of them. I think security surveillance is well accepted, that AI can reduce the cognitive load of monitoring security cameras, so that one person can manage hundreds of AI detected surveillance systems. There are AI systems counting people going in and out of retail stores. So very constrained problems where there's a very simplistic interpretation that that you control, internal variables, you control the lighting, you control the placement, and you control what you have good model for everything that you're trying to detect. Those very narrowly defined problems are being solved left and right. It's as you get more and more general, less control over lighting, less control over environment, less constrained on what you're actually trying to detect, that things get really challenging. And the other challenging one that I was going to say besides self-driving cars is just general video understanding. So like YouTube, they have a huge economic incentive to have general video understanding for their own advertising and revenue purposes. But last I heard, they're not even close to coming up with a generalized solution to being able to understand the activities and objects that are in every uploaded YouTube video.
So can you continue that example a little bit more? Like what benefit would YouTube have if they actually implemented something smart? Would it be, monitoring the videos, or like what would be the use case for that?
Yeah, well, I can say what they have implemented. They've implemented some what I consider content monitoring functions where they're looking for sex or violence that would be inappropriate for certain advertisers to put their content next to, so that they do actually have detectors that work at that level, but they really don't have it working to the level of, Ramesh hit the ball out into left field and he's running to first base. That kind of thing isn't being done yet.
So, okay, so good. So we covered the ground in the market segments, we covered the ground in technology, and then we covered your scope with respect to your Aviate.ai, the community that you're building, as apart from the iCloud, the work that you do. So what are you trying to accomplish as this Aviate AI? What is the community made up of?
Yeah, the community is made up of innovators using AI and video from around the world in a variety of markets, everything from content moderation, automatic video editing, to self-driving vehicles, which we do have representation there. We also have VCs and analysts in the video AI ecosystem that participate in. So it's a business community. We focus on business development, ecosystem development, and market development to help these entrepreneurs and innovators be successful and get to markets faster.
Is there any criteria for people to join the business community? I'm curious to learn more about the actual.
Just an interest in the video AI market from any point in the ecosystem. So we have people that are doing chips all the way up to people deploying services and applications in real world environments.
I think the biggest question is it open for people, or is it a selective admission, or what is it?
We do expect people that are in the industry. So we do accept some students if they're studying visual AI disciplines or something like that where it's relevant. But in general, we're looking for people in the industry.
Oh, okay. So now we'll go segue into the next phase of the discussion. So Dale here, which is your journey. And I personally I've known you from our previous company, but before that, even you have a extensive experience in the startup, you work with the TiVo, you work with established companies like NVIDIA and Xilinx of the world. And so maybe we start backwards of whichever is better for you, right? How was your professional journey? So either you can take us from the most recent, the earliest, or the earliest to recent, however is the most natural for you.
Yeah, we can start at the beginning. I actually did my master's degree in computer vision algorithms and neural networks. And my first job was designing missile guidance systems based on visual guidance systems that track tanks and defeat them. But yeah, I've been in Silicon Valley for a few decades, too many to count almost. And I've been in a dozen startups, 2 of which I founded myself. I've also worked at the big companies like Motorola and Intel and NVIDIA and Xiaomi. So big tech companies, but most proud of being product manager on the first sets of TiVos, bringing those to market, and product manager on the first Android devices, first Android smartphones out of Motorola. So
wow, my husband will probably thank you because he loves his Motorola phones. But so interesting. We talk about computer vision. That was what you studied as your master's. But love to hear more about what made you choose that that specific area of study. What drew you to it? Was it something that in your childhood, or like, I'm just curious about why you chose this path?
Yeah, I guess from my youngest memories, I've been a techie. My father was an electrical engineer, and he used to take us to Cape Canaveral for rocket launches, and I got into that. And thought, my first writings that my mom saved were all about flying in spaceships and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm pretty hardcore geek at heart.
Well, so Dale, I'll ask a little bit of a tough question here. So a lot of people go into startups thinking that that's it. So they will make it, and then the life is made. And you've gone through multiple startups. Looks like you were at the beginning of the TiVo days as well.
Yeah.
So what is the experience like? You join a startup thinking that it's going to make up, and then the startup will go through a trough, and then people may get disillusioned. I'm not saying every startup is like. What has been your journey like, your personal journey as you were going through the ups and downs of the startups?
Yeah, so the early startups that I were involved in were all VC backed, big money, big investors, NEA and Benchmark and Sequoia and all those guys. But the world has changed significantly since those. I mean, my most recent startup was bootstrapped, and the cost of entry for an entrepreneur has dropped dramatically. It's really an amazing time to be an entrepreneur. The amount of capital required to start software and service companies with go out and rent some time on that AWS, and you don't have to set up data centers or anything. It's all pay as you go, and even AWS will give it away free until you're off the ground. So it's a great time to be an entrepreneur. And like I said, as you mentioned, it's quite common, although not always, but it's common that you go into a startup with a premise, and your customer educates you and pivots you to more lucrative versions of that premise. The famous story with TiVo. When I joined TiVo, the CTO who developed the original product concept had envisioned this computer sitting off in the closet that was a video server for the home, and allowed you to watch video on demand stuff from a video server in the closet. And as we did the consumer research and market feedback, we pivoted into something that was more akin and look-alike to their VCR to make it marketable and deployable. So that was and at the time, it originally started as Teleworld, and we rebranded it to TiVo to align with the television paradigm. So, but yeah, it's quite common. Your customer that actually wants to pay you is the one who educates you. You may have great technology and a disruptive experience, but you really need to align with how the market wants to accept it.
So Dale, since you worked in, as Ramesh said, in startups and also established companies, could you sort of compare and contrast the level of innovation that is at different types of companies? I'm going to guess there is more innovation opportunities at startups, but I could be wrong. So I'd love to hear more about the culture, the innovation culture at these types of, startup or not startup, but also maybe the size of the company is also a factor. Or
yeah, by definition, startups are bigger risk takers. And I think I've been in the big companies, and big companies have these little, people, their full-time job is to be an antivirus to innovation. So it's really hard to innovate within a big company. For example, Motorola, my group that did the Android, the first Android smartphone in Motorola, we had to hide. The headquarters were off in Chicago. We had to hide off in Sunnyvale in this Skunk Works building that they didn't know about, because the people that found out about it internally to Motorola, they had their own competing operating system and competing environment that treated us as a virus and a disease because we were competing with them. So it's that kind of stuff that goes on in big corporations.
Wow, even within the same company.
Yeah. We were innovating. We were making a new operating system with Google and going to market with these phones. So the mainstream Motorola, we had to, basically hide from them. Otherwise, it would have killed us.
So then what are the key things that you're walking away with each of these engagements? It's like successful companies, some are not successful, but you probably are taking something with you from each of the engagements into your next engagement, and how can you contribute and make the other company more successful? So is it about, you talked a little bit about the mindset, but how about the ecosystem development? Any of those things that are obvious to you that the good companies should be doing based on the learnings of the failed ones?
Yeah, particularly for tech companies, and this is amplified dramatically with tech companies. It's your ecosystem that makes you successful, right? You can have a disruptive cog in the machine, but if all the other components of the machine aren't aligned with you, you'll never make a dime. So that's
is there an example? Was the TiVo considered a good ecosystem example, or not having enough ecosystem example?
So the TiVo ecosystem that I worked on when I was there was, we had a great product, but we had to bolt into the distribution ecosystem. So I partnered with Philips, I partnered with Sony, where they took Philips and Sony branded product into the channel for distribution through consumer electronics distributors, so that consumers could get it. Otherwise, there wasn't a real, you couldn't go to Amazon.com and order stuff. It was, you had to align with those distributors, and Sony and Philips were the big names for that. So we aligned with them, and we aligned with some vendors that had interesting technology in the back end that gave our product performance.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard today and would like to hear more, please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite player like iTunes and Spotify. And please do rate our podcast. Also, please go to our website, www.datatransformerspodcast.com, for more episodes, blogs, and information on our speakers. Thank you.